And we are going hot. Welcome, everybody. My name is Rock, retired combat vet, and this is episode number 2 of the Actions on the Objective podcast. On this show, I talk with other combat vets and we discuss their experiences inside the battle space. We cover everything from the mundane to kinetic engagements with the enemy. And our guest today inside the Objective Rally Point is Travis Harman. Travis holds 4 MOSs, actually. Radio operator, signal support, infantryman, and a supply specialist inside the Pennsylvania Army National Guard. During his time in service, he deployed to Afghanistan in 2008, and he's here to tell us about his actions on the objective. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Did I get all those MOSs right?
Yeah,
okay.
That was right.
All right. So, yeah, we'll just start from the beginning. So who was Travis growing up? Like, who was Travis in high school? Were you a sports guy or?
I wrestled in junior high for a little bit, couple years. I stopped doing that, got into the whole skateboarding, skater punk type scene. So I was a trouble child, I guess. My father actually enlisted. He was in the Marines in the 80s when I was real young. Got out to raise our family. Joined the Army National Guard in the early 90s, got out of that. 9/11 happened. He joined once more to go to Iraq. Once he did that, I was about 17. He convinced me to join, and that's why I decided to join.
All right. And what year was that? About 2005?
Yeah, around there.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe it was 05. I graduated 06, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
You did like delayed entry program.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then, where'd you go down to do your basic training at?
So I did basic at Fort Benning.
Okay.
At the time, they were doing the infantry and non-combat MOSs, I guess, is what they qualified it as. I was still on Sand Hill. I still went through all the Benning crap that you could imagine.
The Benning School for Boys.
Yeah. And then from there, I went to Fort Gordon. I got bused across Georgia to Fort Gordon.
Okay. And then at Fort Gordon's where you did your AIT for radio operator.
Yep, it was about 13 weeks, but I was there a little longer. Just they had a lot of soldiers going through the program or through the training, and it was backed up. So I was there for a good month until I actually got into training. Like
a holdover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay. And then from there
So there I came home. I did a drill. My dad was working down at Fort Indian Town Gap as I believe it was construction. He was doing remodeling the old barracks down there.
Okay.
And he was able to find me some work helping do support for the MOS trainings, like the infantry, the scouts, artillery, whatever they needed. We would run their ammo. We would run their food to the field, things of that nature. Just basically supporting whatever they needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that from, I don't know, up until I deployed.
Okay.
So up until December of 2007 is how long I did that.
Okay. So now when you deployed, which MOS did you deploy under? Your radio operator still?
So it was kind of screwy. I deployed as a radio operator, but the way it worked out, our unit created a maneuver company, and it had an infantry platoon, a scout platoon, a mortar platoon, snipers, and I believe that was it. And that made up the maneuver company for a deployment. Now, we didn't have an infantry platoon. We had a scout platoon. We had a mortar platoon and the snipers.
So, like, not an infantry scout platoon, but a Cav scout platoon. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, Cav scout platoon, yeah. And then we were trying to fill the actual infantry platoon, but we had no infantry to fill it. So they plucked cooks, mechanics, me. I ended up doing my job as a radio operator, but I guess for deployment purposes, my MOS was infantry.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just kind of got thrown into that.
So where'd you guys go to do your train up? Were you guys down in like JRTC or NTC
We
or
went to Fort Bragg.
Fort Bragg? Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember for the life of me the fob down there, the training fob, where you would go out to the field. We went straight to the field. We didn't go into the barracks and get in processed or anything. We just went straight to the field. And then the last week before we deployed, we got to stay in actual barracks in like the holding area. Yeah.
And then after you left there, was it
We
like Kyrgyzstan or?
yeah, we went to Kyrgyzstan. We were there for about, I want to say, a week, not even a week, and then we flew into Bagram, Afghanistan, and was there for a couple weeks, probably a week again, and then I flew to Fob Mederlam in where the hell is it? Northeast Afghanistan, but
Like Kunar province?
no, it's above that. It's Logman province.
Okay.
Yeah. So Mederlam is the capital of Logman. And then there was an outpost, Kop Nigel, north of that, up the Alashang Valley. And that's where I spent most of my time.
Okay. So how was your like typical day on deployment for you guys?
In the beginning, it wasn't too bad. We didn't see too much action, except a couple pop shots here and there, just testing us.
Mm-hmm.
And then after, I'd say the first month, they just started. They hammered us almost every day they could, one way or another, with rockets or mortars or whatever they got their hands on.
Yeah, it's usually the way it is when a new unit rotates in.
Yeah.
They kind of just probe you a few times just to see how you're reacting before they start really hitting you.
Yeah, they were definitely doing that, and the outpost is where I saw all the action. I did see a little on the actual fob, but for the most part, it was just they would attack the outpost. If we did later in the deployment, as patrols would happen, we'd get attacked on patrols. We'd blow up IEDs and get attacked right after that. The same old song and dance. I'm sure everybody's that's been in combat has gone through over there. But
No, you're good.
typical day, I guess you asked. Since I was a radio operator, I'd get up around 4 and check all the radios. If they needed filled with the crypto, I would go around and fill all the radios with the crypto, make sure they were all talking. Because the night prior, we would get our orders for our mission the next day. So I'd make sure all the radios in the trucks, or whether we were walking, the handheld radios, whatever it was, I would make sure it was good to go before everyone was up. Then I would just go make a pot of coffee and slam that, get my gear around, and by then everybody else was up and moving, and whatever the mission was for the day, we'd take care of it.
Did you have any was there any specific engagements you had, like any HVTs or anything that you guys?
No, we mainly just, it was, at the time, it was hearts and minds.
Mm-hmm.
So we were more of a presence than anything. We weren't kicking in doors. We did, but that wasn't our primary focus. I guess it was more just to be like, hey, we're here. We're going to protect you. Like, whatever the mission was. We would sit at governor. They would do shuras and, at the governor's complex, and we would have to set up security for that. But then the next day we could be doing a compound raid.
Mm-hmm.
The day after that, it's just something like recon maybe. It varied day to day.
Yeah.
But generally, that's how the day started for the most part.
Okay. All right. Yeah. A lot of presence patrols and
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
As far as the HVTs, we did have one we worked with special forces on. We were QRF down the road for them.
Okay.
That was all we were. But other than that, and they didn't activate us for that. We just sat there basically the whole time, and that was about it as far as big engagements, I guess you could say.
Now, did you guys fall under anybody over there, or were you guys your own entity?
So I deployed with 3rd Battalion, 103rd Armor Regiment.
Okay.
We deployed as a battalion. When we first got in country, it was 173rd Airborne was above us, and above them was it was 82nd. It was above them. About a month into the deployment, 101st replaced the 82nd, and I can't remember. 1st Infantry Division replaced 173rd.
Okay.
So we, as a battalion, we were our own.
Yeah.
But that's how we fell.
173rd, they took a lot of engagements during that time frame.
I was there when Chosen Company got slammed. And they, like I said, that was a very tense time because, they had a jailbreak in Kandahar. And then we would get reports that there was only 30 of us on the outpost, maybe, if that. And they would give us reports, 200 Taliban are coming your way. 300 Taliban are coming your way. Every night it was something you wouldn't sleep at all. And even if you were allowed to sleep, you weren't sleeping because, you were worried somebody was going to slip in the wire because that's all it was concertina wire and trip mines and flares. And we had one tower and no gate at the time. We built up on the outpost. We extended it to the top of the mountain because it was on the side of a mountain. It was much like what was that one battle where they just came out with a movie about it?
Cop Keating?
Yes, Cop Keating. How they're sitting down in the middle of the valley there and everybody can just look down on them. That's basically how it was for us.
Yeah, I think that's how most of the cops were. I think the idea is, retarded, I think, for anybody with any tactical sense. But the idea for big army was with the whole hearts and minds thing.
Yeah.
Get you down into the villages.
Yeah, integrated in.
But then you're sitting in a big fishbowl.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
Now, did you guys have like an LPOP for the cop at all that you'd...
We would create them at times. The snipers would go out randomly and do their own thing, and they would kind of report back. Other than that, we didn't have another OP.
Like a designated.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Cop Keating. During that time frame too, there was a lot of cops either getting overrun or attempting to overrun. I mean, you had Keating. I forget the other one.
I think you're right, actually.
Yeah, I can't remember the cop.
Because I know at the time they told us to be prepared to be overrun. And that was the big thing. And it didn't help that the Afghan... We were there with Afghan National Army, the ANA. They would mess with us all the time and be like, oh, tonight, necktie, Afghan necktie. They'll slip in the wire and cut your throat. I'm like, okay, thanks for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and when they attempt to overrun you, I mean, when you're on these small cops, kind of isolated from other coalition forces, you're just kind of out there by yourself.
Yeah.
It can get a little hairy.
Yeah. It did at times, yeah.
We had a time where one of my deployments, one of the cops we were staying on, they were attempting to overrun us, and it just went on for hours. And little did they know that we were just about black on ammo. I mean, we had like nothing left on the cop. And luckily, they retreated back.
Yeah.
But had that gone on another hour or two, they could have
ended.
walked in the front door.
Yeah. Would have ended a whole lot different.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So, and I guess you guys just come back from that deployment then, or
So I I had been medevaced. I don't have a Purple Heart. I don't. It was an injury. It wasn't a wound.
what happened there?
I got hit by a rock
Okay.
in the jaw. Broke my jaw. So I got sent home to Fort Bragg. Well, first I went to Germany. Let me back up. My dad deployed with me.
Oh, really?
Yes. He was stationed at Bagram and was in charge of the Blue Ring. I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's basically they called it the Blue Ring. It was the route the helicopters took from fob to base. For our battalion anyway, he was in charge of the air traffic. So he was at Bagram Air Base. I was on the outpost. I had seen him once when I went on pass to Qatar for the 3 or 5 days they give you to go on pass. I didn't go home on leave at all. We weren't offered to go home on leave. The PRTs were, and that didn't sit well with us. We were in the same battalion, but here we were, the ones risking our necks, so to speak, as a maneuver company doing the combat operations, and we weren't allowed to go. But I understand now it's because we were doing those operations that they didn't want us gone for extended periods of time. They needed us. So being deployed with him, he would get reports of me here and there, either from my platoon leader or somebody that knew me or whatnot. And plus he was able to go see all the chatter that was going on in the command post. And so anyway, fast forward August 20th, I get hit with this rock, and my jaw breaks. They're like, you gotta go. I was like, okay. So they medevac me to Bagram. Well, in the meantime, they had called my father, and all they said was, your son's coming in on the medevac. Hung up the phone. Didn't tell him what happened. Didn't tell him if I was all mangled up. So my ride back from the outpost to Bagram was about 45 minutes by Black Hawk. And there was an Afghan soldier just laying on the floor in front of me dying. You couldn't tell who he was. He was just so badly gone. And they were just waiting for him to die. They kept checking his pulse, and they shake their head, or it was different. It was something that sticks with me. But anyway, so we land in Bagram. They're carrying this guy in on a stretcher, and like I said, he's unrecognizable. I watched my dad run over to this guy and start almost crying, and he's like, oh my God, what happened? And then I come walking in right behind, and he's like, I'm about to break your other jaw. So that was something different. And I had earned my combat action badge while I was there. And while I was in Bagram waiting to be, transported to Germany, he gave me my first combat action badge. My actual I was never awarded in a ceremony.
Right.
I have the paperwork and whatnot, that go with it. Just because of being medevac, nobody came and was like, hey, here's your awards, here's what you earned. But he knew I did, so he gave me my first one. I've still got that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
So from there, I go to Germany. That's where they did the surgery. I was smelly, and I hadn't shaved in probably 3 or 4 weeks. Like, even being a baby-faced 19-year-old, I still had some scruff going. And they told me, they're like, you need to shower and shave. And I literally just came right off the outpost and had, you know. So I got cleaned up and they were like, okay, we're going to do the surgery. We're going to try and go inside the mouth. If we can't, we'll do it on the outside and you'll have a big scar the rest of your life. And I was like, whatever, just fix it. And so they were able to go on the inside so I don't have a scar. They did have to move the nerve in there, which means I didn't have feeling in the left side of my face and the left side of my lower left jaw for the longest time, for years. And then finally it started to come back, and now it's intermittent. It's there for the most part, but on occasion it'll go numb or go away, and then it'll come right back. But so I have 2 plates and 8 screws.
Oh, wow.
In there is my souvenir from Afghanistan.
Now, how'd you get hit with the rock? Was it
Somebody threw it.
somebody threw it? Oh.
Yeah. Somebody threw about a softball-sized rock at it. Yeah. So that was fun.
Unreal.
Yeah.
So then, after you leave Germany, then
I go back to Fort Bragg.
Fort Bragg.
Yeah, and that was almost as bad as Afghanistan. The Warrior Transition Unit down there.
Oh yeah,
was just horrible, or it was anyway. I can't speak on it now. But in 2008, it was the worst. There were people overdosing and dying from their medication because they were being heavily medicated the wrong way, or they were mistreating the medication they were given. You know, people were getting drunk, and it was out of control.
Yeah.
And I was like, I gotta get out of here. So turned out a buddy of mine who had a stroke in Afghanistan was sent there as well. And when I showed up, he kind of took me under his wing and showed me the ins and outs of what was going on there. And he's like, plan to be here for a year at least. And I was like, I can't be here for a year. I got to get home. So the first, I in processed for about a week and got settled in. And then I got to go home on leave for about 30 days. So I went home. 30 days was up. Went back to Fort Bragg. Was there for another month or two. Let's see, August. I left Fort Bragg in November. Is when I actually got out. I was home on leave all of September.
Okay.
So, about 2 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, WTUs are rough. When I was getting out, I was in a Warrior Transition Unit too, and I mean, you just got these guys just coming off deployment. A lot of them are wounded. Mm-hmm. They're dealing with PTSD issues and everything else. You know, it's a rough place to be.
Yeah.
It's definitely not. Isn't anything pleasant about it.
No.
So then you redeploy back home then from there.
Yep. And then I came home. I started going to drill once a month, 1 weekend a month. And I liked the Army culture. I didn't want to just be 1 weekend a month. I wanted to be active duty. So I looked into transferring to active duty Army. And as it happened, my dad, again, who was always looking out for me, told me about a position, an active guard and reserve position at my unit that was coming up for a radio operator. And I knew another soldier was applying to the job, and he would most likely get it because he was my mentor. So I was like, I'm not even going to apply. I'm just going to go active duty. He's like, just apply. I did. The other soldier got the job, but he ended up declining it because he had to travel so far for it, and they weren't willing to work with him to accommodate. So I was the second pick, and I got the job. So I became active duty for the National Guard
Okay.
in 2009,
Okay.
June of '09.
Now, your dad, was he then, was he in aviation? With
No,
what?
no, he's been infantry.
Okay.
So he was okay.
I was just wondering because you were
Yeah,
saying he.
he was the unit movement officer.
Okay.
Is what he was, but he was an E5 at the time,
Okay.
and then he got promoted to E6. Um, but yeah, he had nothing to do with aviation or
Okay. I was just wondering because you were saying he was like with the aircraft.
Yeah, like me, he's got multiple MOSs. He's a tanker. He's an infantryman. He's a mortarman. He's a supply specialist. You know, so many different things that he did, and they just threw him into it, and he was able to do it. So
Awesome.
he ran with it.
Yeah, it's kind of the one cool thing about, I would think, about the Guard and Reserve, because a lot of Guard and Reserve guys I meet have multiple MOSs. I think it's because, if your unit changes,
Yeah.
or you just go to another unit, they got slots to fill, now you're,
I know for me, when so I joined as a 25 Charlie, which is a radio operator. I did my deployment. I came home. I took that position as a AGR, and I had to get a new MOS. I had to become the signal support system specialist, the 25 uniform. So even though I knew everything about the job and how to perform the job, I didn't have the MOS. And so I had to go to school for that at Toby Hanna. And that was about a month of school, because once you're in and you go back to an MOS school for the Guard, most of the time they have their own MOS schools, like I did support for, and then it's an accelerated course. It's not like, say you're going to infantry school, it's not the whole, 9 weeks, 13 weeks, somewhere in there.
it used to be, I think, 14. Now I think they upped it to like 22 weeks now.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Good. But anyway, instead of like the 19 weeks, it would be 3 weeks.
Okay.
And then you get the MOS, you get the blue cord, you get all of it. So when I went to infantry school, I wanted to be infantry ever since Afghanistan. And that just bugged me. Like, you did an infantryman's job, but you'll never be infantry, so to speak, on paper. So I went and got that. And then it enabled me to be able to find other jobs in the Guard that I could do. And it led me to where I wanted to be. Like, I wanted to be infantry. And then I took a promotion to staff sergeant, so to be a supply sergeant. So that's how I got my E6.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then was supply the same thing? They just like send you to like a kind of a crash course?
School, yeah. I went to New Hampshire for that.
Oh, wow.
And that was actually a pretty good time. It was in the middle of nowhere in like an old school campus, like a high school campus. And it was pretty neat.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then, so you basically then you just did that up until
I got medically discharged.
Okay.
For PTSD.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was in like 2018, you said?
Yeah, 2018.
Okay. And then, so how was it then for you transitioning?
That was very rough. I struggled with PTSD from when I came home in 2008. And I didn't want to recognize it or admit it. And my parents would keep telling me, you got to get help. My spouse at the time kept telling me, you got to get help. I didn't want to listen to anybody. And finally, when I was at work, the one day I had a breakdown at work, just kind of a meltdown. And they're like, they basically ordered me to go get counseling. So I went and started getting counseling, and they were like, So the counselor was like, you need to go to inpatient. So I went to about 2, 3 months of inpatient treatment up in Batavia, New York,
Mm.
for through the VA. Um, did that, and when I got back, they said we're gonna med board you. Um, and then I got med boarded, and they found me they rated me at like 100%.
Oh, okay.
So I just I got out, and I was like, I gotta get into school. But in the meantime, like personal life, I was on a downward spiral. You know, my wife and I separated. I started drinking real heavy, started getting into drugs, and just getting rid of all of my responsibility. And, you know, I put them through hell. Luckily, my wife was able to forgive me, and we're still together. Um, I put myself and everybody through hell because of my demons that I
Mm.
didn't want to address. And finally, I'm in a good spot in my life now. Um,
That's great. Yeah,
yeah,
and it's a common story, unfortunately,
yeah,
for guys like deploy to combat and come home. But at least you guys were able to reconcile everything.
yeah,
So now that you're kind of got your life back on track and you're going to school, you said for creative writing.
yeah. So 2018, I got out. I enrolled in Southern New Hampshire University for my associate degree in liberal arts. I got that in December of what was that? Last December. So December of 21. Um, I was working on my bachelor's in creative writing through them, and then I found Wilkes University doesn't require a bachelor's degree to go into their master's program for creative writing, which I intended to do and then after that go for my master of fine arts, which is through Wilkes. It's you go right from your master's into your master of fine arts if you choose to, and
Okay.
that's the path I'm taking. So with that, I'll be able to teach at the college level. I'll be
Okay.
able to teach creative writing English.
Is that
Yeah.
your goal then?
Yeah, eventually. Um, so I don't have a bachelor's degree. I'm working on my master's degree at the moment, and I should, if everything goes according to plan, graduate June of 23
Okay.
with my master's, and then it'll be another 6 months, and then in January of 24 I'll have my master of fine arts.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's awesome. And then during this time, you said you're in the middle of writing a memoir.
Yeah, so my thesis for my master's is my memoir, my time in Afghanistan. Essentially, it's from the time 9/11 happened until, coming home from the Warrior Transition Unit. This is
Hmm.
the time frame I'm looking to write about. I'm at about 30,000 words right now. I'm shooting for 60 to 75,000, so about halfway done.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. And then you did say you want to eventually try to get it
Yeah,
published.
I do want to get it published. In the meantime, though, I am writing shorter stories or excerpts from my memoir and submitting them to places. And yesterday, I actually got published by it's called Line of Advance Literary Journal.
Okay.
It's for veterans, and I submitted to them a couple months back, and they published me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that's an
Okay.
online publication.
Okay. And so how could people find it? Line of Advance?
Line of Advance is what it's called.
Okay.
Um,
And then
but
if they go on there,
if you go right on the home site, I'm the first. Um, there's a picture of me on there, and it says my name, and it has my story right there. And that's
awesome.
actually the medevac story. Is
Okay.
what that one is.
Excellent. Yeah. And I'm going to try to put a link in the description to it also.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there anything else going on that you'd like to?
I just want to send a message to everybody that listens. Is if you have somebody in your life that's struggling with PTSD, like don't be afraid to grab them and shake them and be like, hey, you got to get some help or something. I mean, don't push them to the edge,
Hmm.
But I know people care about their significant others and their loved ones that are struggling with this, but I don't. I lost a friend in March from my platoon. And I just think like, had we reached out to him,
Mm-hmm.
would he still be here? So yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of resources out there now too. Like
Yeah.
as opposed to generations before us. I mean, like the vet center. I mean, that's free.
Yeah.
And then just counseling through the VA. And I'm sure there's other programs out there that I don't know about. I know there's the Veteran Suicide Awareness Hotline. Yeah, absolutely. If anybody's struggling, definitely don't be afraid to either call up an old buddy or go to go to your local vet center or whatever you got to do.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming in, brother.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing this. And for everybody else, if you like this episode, feel free to breach that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share the show with your friends. Don't forget, you can find us on our YouTube channel and on Spotify. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on The Objective.